Can you all hear me in the Yale virtual world? All right, good. Really, I guess it's what they call a contrafact melody. What a contrafact is when you write a new melody over a pre-existing song form. So that was a melody written over John Coltrane's Giant Steps. But more specifically, actually, it's a contrafact of a contrafact. So the great Freddie Hubbard wrote a really cool tune called Dear John, which was a contrafact over John Coltrane's Giant Steps. But Freddie Hubbard added a really nice intro to it with some cool chords, and I've always enjoyed that intro, so I wrote a contrafact for that intro as well, okay?
That tempo felt great.
Good, let's try it faster. All right, what else was I gonna say? Oh. Calling it a collective is just, in some ways, respecting the other members of the band as equals and letting them know that, their input artistically, and again, their background and maybe some things that some goals that they have for their career and some of the stories and that they want to tell are all welcome. And as valid as mine. So that's really my idea of calling this a collective. I want everyone to be an equal percent a leader of the band.
My background is that I noticed that a lot of the guys in the band, as we got to know each other, they're from creative families and artistic families, and I'm 180 degrees in the other direction. Like my whole family tree, there are no musicians. No artists, so I'm really like the black sheep of my family in that regard. I do a lot of Broadway gigs and things of that nature, so I kind of come into this setting and like through the side door, so to speak.
Jeremy used to put like mini disc recordings of gigs on his website, and when I was in high school, I downloaded all of them and had them burnt on a CD and was listening to them in my car, and you couldn't tell me nothing. Like I was just like, I was like, yo man, I'm going to New York to like play with these dudes, you know. And so now to be in like a safe space with like these folks and to be able to, like there's, for one, there's a hat off to them for, the next iteration of this band of, bringing like some guys that are younger than them, like a generation a little below into the fold and like carrying on this like tradition of mentorship. I mean, this is a generalization, but generally you kind of see where the good music is. Somebody sort of had someone to carry them along, but also with an eye towards like the future and like, you know, continuity and developing what was there. You know, like this just conceptual continuity that happens in music.
Sometimes I feel like I should completely ignore my contemporaries, and other times when I've done that for too long, I feel like I'm sort of out of the loop. Then I need to sort of check out what's going on. Sometimes it's very distracting to see what everyone else likes, and you know, even if you say I'm not going to copy this person that's popular, just the fact that you know that they're popular is going to affect you, you know, subconsciously. So sort of stepping in and out of that, those influences are, you know, are really important. Or, so, you know, sometimes I want to be a historian and, you know, dig deeper into very specific parts of, you know, these subgenres of jazz. And other times maybe I want to step away and listen to something completely different, you know. But it's always changing and coming back and forth. That's sort of the way to be thorough, to be more thorough and check out everything, which is not like check out everything at one time, but go through sort of phases where you're focused on one thing and then you can leave that phase and go to another phase.
Jazz is like classical music. You gotta go to the past. If you don't, everybody will know on the stage. So if you don't have a certain thing, like for me as a drummer, if I can't play a ride cymbal beat like at a medium tempo, people will know. I come from a musical family background, I guess. My father's a professional musician, he's a guitarist, and my uncle, also, not his brother, my mother's brother, is a professional drummer. He used to play with a lot of people, still does. So I was very fortunate, I guess, in that regard. I had a lot of exposure to music, to jazz in particular, at a very young age. A sideman in my career. I have to contribute some music to this group. That is definitely
That's the next thing.
my next thing. But most of the time I'm learning other people's music, and in that regard, I get to grow a lot too.
Trombone in my monitor.
So I have a question, and it has to do with your name. You're called the Black Art Jazz Collective, and I'm wondering, what does Black art mean to you? What do you think Black art is? What isn't Black art? And what makes your music Black in particular?
The title of the band is provocative, and it's meant to be so. and when Wayne and I and Jonathan Blake met, it's kind of it should be looked at as both a reclamation and a proclamation.
I've been dealing with thinking about this, and one of these buzz terms for the last few years is like safe spaces. And so in a space like this, like Black folks need safe spaces. A lot of the world doesn't really know, most of y'all get to know Black folks in your spaces. And so you don't necessarily experience like Black folks, like you don't necessarily experience Black culture in the way that like Black folks are in Black safe spaces. So when you have a band like this, you essentially create like what's a Black cultural safe space where the music is it's not necessarily like black in terms of like you can put your finger on it's this or that, but it's like it's a bunch of brothers like doing what they do and feeling, not necessarily feeling like there's a cap or some sort of that there's any expectation for the like there's not necessarily like an expectation for the subject matter of the music. We got tunes called Involuntary, Servitude, and talking about Tulsa and things like that, which might not happen outside of like this space. If you sort of, you could just look through historically, for instance, jazz journalism was clear that like John Coltrane played Black, whether they said it or not. They'd explain, you read these reviews that sort of called his playing jungle, sort of angry and sort of from like feeling like jungleistic or primal, all these kind, like the words that they use to describe music when Black people play them. This isn't what John Coltrane says. There's a great interview where John Coltrane says, "I'm not angry. I'm loving the moment." But the European journalist asked if it was angry. So again, I think part of this deal is like it's a proclamation to say, well, yeah, we play Black the way that journalists have described what Black playing is, but it's not primal, it's not angry. It's just like it's a space where Black people do what they do. And so if you, I feel like a question like that, it's really on to you. It's up to you to like listen to it's a great video of like Coltrane and Stan Getz playing next to each other, and you can decide what Black sounds like and what white sounds like.
I think one of the things, and this kind of goes to the question that was asked about the different experiences that we bring to it. One of the things that it should present to anyone that's listening is that it's not a monolithic experience to be Black. And so therefore you have a lot of different perceptions and experiences, using your word, that bring you to this music.
Jeremy and I are kind of a similar age. We kind of went to school together, and in the same place, and we're inspired by a lot of the same, kind of coached by some of the same people in a certain area.
And Victor and I actually grew up listening to these guys. So in a sense, like right there, we're all coming from different backgrounds. So we're all coming at the same music, but definitely from a different perspective. I was born in 1990, man. You know what I'm saying? Like, I know that seems nothing to you guys, but whenever I say it to them, everybody's like, what the hell does that even mean? You know?
Also, just don't. I think sometimes people take for granted that Black is just Black. We all have completely different experiences. My family's Jamaican. I was born in the UK. I happen to be, but I was raised here in the United States. And in addition to being raised in the United States, I was raised in Connecticut. So, and I lived on Yale lived in Yale housing, but 2 blocks away from, you know, Newhallville, which is one of the largest, you know, you guys know Newhallville. It's like there's a lot of gang activity there. Let's just put it that way. Okay. So, but I went to a lot of private schools. Okay. So now my experience as a Jamaican immigrant with, you know, Jamaican family with British family, being black in a private school environment in Connecticut is going to be different than maybe a cat who was born in New York and lived in the Bronx. And you know, what's funny is, like, you know, you assume that we've all had very similar experiences, but our experiences could be entirely different. And one of the great things that I love about this music jazz is that it allows us, I really appreciate how Rashaan put it, allows us to have a safe space to come together as black people of different varieties to kind of share our experiences in music. And you know, one of the interesting things I was thinking about recently is like I said, you might have someone who's African American who was born and raised in New York City, maybe in the Bronx or in Harlem, and you might have me who I'm British, I'm light skinned, but the question you could ask the question, well, which one of these 2 individuals do you think has experienced most racism? The person who was born and raised in the Bronx and spent most of their time in the black community, or somebody who maybe in certain circles could be thought of as less than black, or in certain circles could be called more, you know, not white, and be in an environment where it's mostly white people and you're the only minority. Now, which one of those groups do you think has experienced more racism? Which one of those has been called names that they don't even want to mention more often than others? You know, so it's a whole interesting thing. So just because you see a group of black people on stage, you can't assume that, you know, the darker skinned one with dreads who is talking the loudest is the one who has had more of the black American experience. You know, we've all had different experiences.
One more question, and actually I want someone from else besides Wayne to answer it. Wayne said, you know, in the past that playing jazz taught him to be a man, and I'm wondering, you know, like what he might have meant by that. If any of you feel similarly, you know, and what, like, putting into words how exactly that happens, becoming a man through mentorship or through playing the music.
It's about accountability, and it's about responsibility, and it's about, you know, knowing what it takes to be more than proficient, but to really heighten all your senses, and also just know how to react. There's a lot of different properties that go to playing this music that are akin, that are equal to just your development as a human being. You see, and so that's what I perceive the meaning of that to be.
Yeah, and without, I'm not going to answer your question, really, because you asked me not to. You know, you asked me this question, or rather I responded in relation to what I do. But this can be, I would imagine that this would hold true to anyone if they were on if they were on a professional basketball team, a professional soccer team. You know, if they got chosen to be the goalie for, you know, NYCFC, I would imagine that what is required to be on that team and to be in that position is going to make that person change from a boy to a man, or that woman change from a girl to a woman. Because, like Jeremy said, you have to be accountable. It's about accountability and learning. You learn a lot about yourself when you're thrust into a certain environment where you are not the main focus.
That sounds like an answer. But,
there's a certain amount of accountability, like Jeremy said as well, and just there's a point where you start realizing, like, this isn't a game anymore. Like, for me, for example, I played drums since I was, I don't know, before I could remember doing anything else, you know? So drums was kind of just like, it's fun and it's always this. And then I remember like after, even during college, it was still fun. It was serious. I was very serious about it, but it was still fun. And then when I moved out and I was on my own in New York City, I changed because it was no longer fun. It was a real job. I had to do this to make myself eat and
You no longer
pay my
just
rent. Yeah, it was no longer, I'm sorry, that's what I meant. No longer just fun, obviously, yeah.